Jason's Academy, Social Science, Class 7th. History, Lesson 6, Architecture during Medieval Period. Hello students, today we are going to start History, Lesson 6, Architecture during Medieval Period. There were many developments in the field of art and architecture during the medieval period. In this chapter, we will be learning about the various materials and engineering skills used for building various architectural monuments. First topic is monuments and architecture under Delhi Sultanate. The architecture of Delhi Sultanate includes the buildings and monuments built in 320 years in Delhi and surrounding areas by slave Khilji, Tughlaq, Sayyid and Lodi dynasties. In Sultanate of Mamluk Sultans, Qutub Minar monument was built. The minar is originally inspired by the Afghan architecture. It was to be built as a victory tower to commemorate the victory of Muhammad Ghori. Its construction, as we all know, was started by Qutb ud-Din and was finished by Iltutmish and later repaired by Firoz Shah Tughlaq and Sikandar Lodi. The Qutub Minar was constructed from material collected from Hindu buildings and temples. For its decoration, the Hindu craftsmen were used and they applied the same style of inlaying which they had been using in building temples. The floral designs, bales and chains were made to decorate the minar from exciting material remains of temples. In Sultanate of Mamluk Sultans, Quwwat-ul-Islam monument was also built. This was first mosque built in Delhi after the Islamic conquest of India and the oldest surviving example of Ghurids architecture in India subcontinent, built mainly on the rubbles of the 27 Hindu and Jain temples. In Khilji Sultans, the Alai Darwaza near Qutub Minar monument was built. It was constructed with a dome-shaped gate made of red sandstone and decorated with stunning Turkic features made of white marble inlay and inscriptions engraved in the ancient Naksh script and screens made with lattice stone depicting unique Turkic craftsmanship. In Tughlaq Sultans, Tughlaqabad Fort, Hose Khas, Firoz Shah Kotla monuments were built. The palace cum fortress complex of Tughlaqabad was constructed by Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. Muhammad bin Tughlaq built the tomb of Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq on a high platform which marks a new trend in architecture for imposing skyline. He built Jahan Pana, one of the cities of Delhi. Firoz Shah built Hose Khas, a pleasure resort, and also built Firoz Shah Kotla Fort. The Tughlaq's ruler started building the tombs on an elevated platform. They combined the principles of arch and done with Islam's and as are evident in Firoz Shah Tughlaq's construction of Hose Khas. In Sultanate of Lodi Sultans, Lodi gardens were built. It is the finest example of the synthesis of dome, arc, slam and beam. Other examples of architectures are Masjid Mot, Bara Khan and Chota Khan. Hence, the architectural excellence of the Sultanate period witnesses the evolution and development of Indo-Islamic architecture by synthesizing geometrical shapes, calligraphy, inscriptional art, etc. Our next topic is monuments and architecture under the Mughal. Mughal rulers were great builders. They built beautiful forts, palaces, tombs and mosques. Akbar built many monuments like in Fatehpur Sikri, Buland Darwaza, Diwan-e-Khas, tomb of Sheikh Salim Chishti, the Panch Mahal in Agra Fort, Khas Mahal, Moti Masjid, Diwan-e-Am. And Jahangir built Shalimar Garden in Kashmir, tomb of Akbar at Sikandara. Aurangzeb built the Moti Masjid in Delhi, Badshah Mosque in Lahore, Bibi Ka Maqbara in Aurangabad. North Indian temple architecture style of architecture produced throughout northern India and as far south as Bijapur district in northern Karnataka state. Characterized by its distinctive shikhara, a superstructure tower or spire above the Garbhagriha, a small sanctuary housing the main image or emblem of the temple deity. The style is sometimes referred to as Nagra, a style of temple mentioned in the Shilp Shastra, but exact correlation of the Shilp Shastra terms with extant architecture has not yet been established. The typical Hindu temple in northern India on plain consists of a square garbhagriha preceded by one or more adjoining pillared mandaps which are connected to the sanctum by an open or closed vestibule. The entrance doorway of the sanctum is usually richly decorated with figures of rivers, goddess and bands of florals, figural and geometric ornamentation. An ambulatory is sometimes provided around the sanctum. The shikhara is usually curvilinear in outline and smaller rectilinear shikharas frequently top the mandaps as well. The whole may be raised on a terrace with attendant shrines at the corners. If a temple is dedicated to the god Shiva, the figure of the bull Nandi, the god's mount, invariably face the sanctum. And if dedicated to the god Vishnu, standards may be set up in front of the temple. One typical form of the northern Indian style is seen in the early temples at Orissa, such as the graceful 8th century Parshu Rameshwara temple at Bhubaneswar, a city that was a great center of temple building activity. From the 10th century, a characteristic Oriya style developed that exhibited a greater elevation on the wall and a more elaborate spire. The 11th century Lingaraja temple at Bhubaneswar is an example of the Oriya style in its fullest development. The 13th century Sun temple at Konark, the sanctum of which is badly damaged, is the largest and perhaps the most famous Oriya temple. A development from the simpler to a more elevated and elaborate style is evident in central India, except that the Shakri type of superstructure with multiple tenets is more favored from the 10th century onward. Interiors and pillars are more richly carved than in Orissa. The central Indian style in its most developed form appears at Khajuraho, as seen in the Kendriya Mahadev temple. There, an overall effect of harmony and majesty is maintained despite the exuberance of sculpture on the outer walls. The rich profusion of miniature shrines on the Shakri spire reinforces the ascending movement considerably. Large number of temples are preserved in Gujarat, but most of them have been badly damaged. The early 11th century Sun temple at Modhera is one of the finest. South Indian temple architecture, also called Dravida style architecture, invariably employed for Hindu temples in modern Tamil Nadu from the 7th to the 18th century, characterized by its pyramidal or Kutina type tower. Variant forms are found in Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh state. The South Indian temple consists essentially of a square chambered sanctuary topped by a superstructure tower or spire and an attached porch or hall. Next is chief feature of Architecture under Delhi Sultanate. The Sultans of Delhi wanted to construct their buildings on the pattern of Iran and Central Asia. Thus, though the buildings were designed by Muslim architects to suit the requirements of their religious ideas, yet they were constructed by Hindu craftsmen who formed the finest artistry of the world. Obviously, the buildings had a combination of Indo Islamic architecture. Several buildings were constructed out of the materials used in the temples that were destroyed by some of the Muslim rulers. Quwat ul Islam Mosque in Delhi is said to have been built by Qutb ud-Din Aibak. During the Sultanate period, geometrical designs began to be used for decoration purposes. The use of Quranic ayats in the building served two purposes, that is, religious as well as decorative. During the Sultanate period, several types of colored stones like red, light, black, yellow, and white marbles were used. A very good quality of stone was used to make the building strong. Next is Shah Jahan's architecture. On account of the intense interest taken and vigorous efforts made in raising magnificent and spacious building by Shah Jahan, the Mughal period in general and his period in specific came to be known as the golden period of Indian structure. During his period, architecture reached its highest watermark in India. Shah Jahan has been variously called as Prince among builders and Engineer King on account of his love for architecture. Important features of Shah Jahan's building are: Shah Jahan's buildings are unmatched in exquisite beauty of form. Shah Jahan's buildings have no parallel in symmetry of design. Shah Jahan's buildings are unsurpassed in grandeur. Shah Jahan's buildings have great strength. Shah Jahan's buildings have beautiful balance among different parts. Shah Jahan's buildings have a great variety: cities, forts, gardens, mosques, and palaces. Shah Jahan's buildings are located at different palaces like Agra, Ahmedabad, Ajmer, Delhi, Lahore, Kabul, and Kashmir, etc. Shah Jahan's building displays a synthesis of Indian and foreign architectural site. Shah Jahan's buildings are mostly built with white marble in place of red stone. In the fort, among the important buildings are Diwan Khas, the Rang Mahal, Nahar, Bhashit, and Diwan-e-Am. The famous Persian poet Firuzdoshi had said about the beauty of Diwan-e-Khas. The Taj Mahal was erected by the Emperor Shah Jahan in the memory of his beloved wife Mumtaz Mahal. Probably, it is the only memorial in the world to reflect the eternal love of a king for his queen. Jama Masjid, built at Delhi, was constructed with red stone for the use of the royal family. High towers and domes are its special characteristics. Next is architecture in regional areas. There were great builders like independent ruler and governors. For example, Ahmad Shah founded the city of Ahmedabad in Gujarat. Many buildings were constructed in Bijapur, Bidar, and Gulbarga by the Bahmani rulers. For example, the Jama Masjid in Gulbarga. The Gol Gumbaj was constructed by Muhammad Adil Shah II in Bijapur. It is the largest dome in India. The architecture during medieval period has contributed to the Indian culture. New styles of architecture, that is Indo-Islamic, developed during the period. The Taj Mahal, Brideshwar Temple, Qutub Minar are some of the remarkable developments in the field of architecture. Here we have completed our chapter. I hope you all have understood. Thank you.